Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review here for a book that I loved when I was a kid. It's from one of my favorite writers of all time. One of my biggest inspirations as a writer ever was Alvin Schwartz, who created Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, along with Stephen Gammell. And he also wrote this book, I believe either right before or during or after the first Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book. I don't know when it came out, I just know it was the 80s, probably mid-80s if I had to bet. Anyway, that particular book is very short. It's a children's book, and I can read reading level 2 with help book. But it was one that, if you know about this book and you were a kid when you read it, you understand the fear that came from this horror book from back in the day. It was a different level from Goosebumps in a lot of ways. It was a bunch of stories that stuck with me most of my life. And when I had a back injury in 2018, I got back into reading, and I wanted to go ahead and grab a copy of this. I bought it in hardcover here. And I read it so much in elementary school when I would finish up my pre-work for the day when we would start class at the first homeroom class of the day. I had a classmate named Kelsey, and she and I both would try to rush over and get a copy of this to read as fast as possible. We were the first two done every single day, and we loved this book. Everybody in my school loved this book. It's called, and that was in the 90s by the way, In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories. It's retold, folklore and myths and whatever, urban legends, by Alvin Schwartz, the creator of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, like I said, and the pictures are done by Dirk Zimmer this time around. Dude, I love this book. I decide pretty much to try to read it every Halloween, or every October, I guess, when I get a chance, kind of like the I Spy Halloween books. I love to read those around Halloween time. They're just fun to look at, especially the Christmas one. I Spy book is amazing. But In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories has a newer version that has an absolutely awful set of artwork. Do not pick that up. It's as bad as the new Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book, too. Don't pick up the new versions, just get the ones with the original art like this. Anyway, there's about 6 or 7 stories in here. There was one in particular that stuck with me. These stories aren't amazing, it's more about the artwork for me. But a couple of the stories in here have stuck with me my whole life, and it's how I found out about what this book was called when I was looking for it when I had my back injury. The one in particular that stands out the most is a story called The Green Ribbon, about a young girl who we meet when she's like a kid, and she wears a green ribbon around her neck, and nobody really knows why. There's a particular neighbor boy who has a crush on her, and eventually they get married and whatever. And he pretty much asked her entire life, like, hey, why do you wear the green ribbon around your neck? Why do I never see you without it? And she won't tell him why. Eventually, when we find out why, it is horrific. And it scared the hell out of me as a kid. It stuck with me my entire life, and I will never forget it as long as I live. That was the thing that burned this book into my head. There are some other stories in here too, like one involving teeth, people that keep coming up to main character kids that have these humongous teeth. I think that one's just called The Teeth, as a matter of fact. There's a story in here about a woman talking to corpses in the graveyard. All of this sounds probably pretty dark for a kid's book. You have no idea. The 80s was a hell of a time. In a Dark, Dark Room is kind of a 10-page long story based on the title, obviously. About a haunted house, spooky treasure chest inside of that house and whatever. That was kind of cool. There's a story in here I totally ripped off one time when I was like in high school and I wanted to get into writing. This story was like an urban legend. I wanted to retell it my own way. It's called The Night It Rained. That's pretty cool, about a guy who is driving by in a cemetery or whatever and happens to see a kid standing over on the side of the road just by himself in the rain. And he's like, dude, it's raining outside, you know? You need to get back into shelter. Let me drive you home or whatever. Nowadays, you couldn't tell that story the way it was because it would be something about stranger danger, but at the time, it was kind of cool. Then you had a story in here about the pirate, so that one was kind of lame. Probably the weakest one of the entire book aside from the In the Graveyard thing. And then the final story in here is called The Ghost of John. It's about 2 pages long, and it's, it is what it is, But anyway, about 7 stories. Some of them are technically songs, like the lady with the graveyard thing. But let me show you some of the art in here too, dude. The art is just unforgettable. Look at this opening splash page here. Kind of like splash page like a comic book. Look at the detailing on this stuff, man. It also looks like it has like a fabric, like almost like a texture for the actual art. It's amazing to me. I can't understand how you could read this book and not be fascinated with the original art from Dirk Zimmer, dude. It's absolutely incredible. And to me, it's a shame they tried to update the art to make the book less scary, which seems to be the reason for this and Scary Stories getting a replacement art. But to me, that's insulting to the original artist who co-created this book and made it such a classic anyway. This is such a good read. For kids, for families, it's kind of mild horror, but it has some truly scary things in there that I think would really mess with kids in general. But In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories really has a lot to offer. And in my personal opinion, it's one of my favorite books I ever read when I was a kid. It's one of those things like Goosebumps, obviously behind me, that got me obsessed with horror. And then eventually, either right before or right after, I saw Halloween for the first time on TV with my mom. And that just kicked everything off. That was the obsession from that point on. Twilight Zone, Tales from the Dark Side, X-Files, all that stuff just really compiled me into a humongous horror fan that never could let it go my entire life. But I owe a lot of it to this book in my elementary school days, because the idea of scary stories, not touching, heartfelt stories, was incredibly interesting to me, and it always has been ever since. So, my obsession now with physical media and horror comes probably from this book, Goosebumps, and again, mainly Twilight Zone and Halloween. That's pretty much it. Anyway, have you read In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories from Alvin Schwartz and Dirk Zimmer? I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Obviously, it's not as good or great as what I think Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books are, or that trilogy, whatever you want to call it. But I love this book. I think it is just a really cool book for kids. It was great when I was a kid, and I try to read it through an adult perspective and also a children's perspective, but I just appreciate it in general. More of a nostalgic review than anything, I would say this video probably is. But but I really enjoy it, and I think for what it was, it's fantastic. I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars if I had to rate it. Anyway, what do you guys think about In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories? Do you love the book? Do you hate it? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts and comments about it down in the comment section down below. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Hopefully you'll tune in and check out this book at some point, and I hope you had a happy Halloween, even though I missed it by a couple of days to review this video, or this book, by that time. Anyway, thank you all, guys. God bless you all. Happy Thanksgiving, that's coming up next. Merry Christmas, because that's coming up right after that. I'll just throw all of them at you. God bless you guys. Goodbye.